È l'alba qui a Kharkiv, stanno caricando questi furgoni per portare il pranzo di Natale a Liman. Stiamo seguendo questo convoglio umanitario, vedete stiamo entrando a Liman. Oggi è considerata molto pericolosa, ci sono state delle esplosioni.
I volontari di Alex 21 arrivano dalla Germania e dagli Stati Uniti, dall'Oregon, insieme a Ukraine Aid International, scordati dalla polizia.
Vediamo che cosa ci danno. La zuppa. Il pranzo di Natale, va bene, ma la cosa importante è che qualcuno ha pensato a noi.
Dice come sono stati i mesi sotto l'occupazione russa.
Una parola, paura, tanta paura, ma non vado da nessuna parte, eh. Questa è la mia terra, qui vivevano i miei antenati. Quando sento questi spari e tremo tutta. Sono vecchia, non c'è gas né acqua, ma non importa, vinceremo lo stesso. E stapperemo una bottiglia di champagne e balleremo.
3 giorni dopo la liberazione eravamo qui come volontari. A Liman sono sempre stati positivi, caldi, ed è raro, in genere sono spaventati e ti rubano il cuore.
Hanno visto cose davvero terribili. Questo è il Natale migliore per me.
Arriva dai bambini tedeschi, da Amburgo. Siamo molto tristi sapendo che da voi c'è la guerra. Speriamo finisca presto.
Welcome everyone to EuroFile, and today we have such an honored guest with us, Stefania Battistini. Hello, Stefania.
Hello, everybody.
Hi, Scott. How are you today?
Well, because Stefania's here, I'm doing really, really well.
Let's introduce a little bit, okay? I'd like to introduce Stefania properly so that everyone knows, okay, what she does. A war reporter, Stefania, and you're a special envoy for RAI News. This is the TG1, which is the anchor program for the Italian broadcaster. But Stefania's also been to different areas in the world where there has been a lot of hardship and a lot of events, tumultuous events, like in Syria and Kurdistan, also in areas that have been hit by earthquakes. COVID, right, Stefania? You were in Lombardy as well. And now, now you're in Ukraine, okay? And something actually great happened. Okay, in your experience, you were awarded by President Zelensky the Order of Olga, Princess Olga III, okay, of the 3rd degree. It's the same award that was also given to Nancy Pelosi, okay, as well. So congratulations on that. Well deserved, and we're going to find out why, okay, as we go along. You know, I was sitting thinking about all the material, everything that we deal with every single day. Okay, Stefania. A lot of times we get caught up, I find, in the geopolitics, right, of the war itself. Where everybody's talking about Prigozhin, yes, Prigozhin, no. Okay, what is his latest? We get caught up in the numbers, right, of the war itself, how many missiles have been shot down and all of this kind of thing. It's all part of it. The information war, okay, as well. But at the essence, at the core of all of this, are the actual people themselves, the Ukrainians, who are, right, there, and they are defending themselves, their lives, their homes, their families, their livelihoods against Russian missile attacks and aggression every single day. I saw an interview with the commander-in-chief of the Ukrainian Armed Forces, General Zelensky. Okay, Zarushny, sorry, never pronounced these correctly. And he said this, he said, the Ukrainians are the reason we are still holding on. He said, the Ukrainian soldiers, NCOs, generals, officers are dying every day, injured every day, but hold their ground. Then he continued, The professional military starts the war. The teachers and engineers end it. And this is what is happening now. And this, Stefania, is what you do every day when you bring us your reportage, right, from Ukraine on the ground. You're telling the stories. And this is what I'd like to get in with you. Okay, this is how I'd like to begin. You were sent, right? You got to Ukraine before the second invasion, before the full-scale invasion. Okay, you were there on the ground. Can you tell us a little bit about how you got there, and then also a little bit, the atmosphere you saw, the feelings and the observations, okay, when you first got there? Because I know you also went to Donbas that has been at war. The Ukraine has been at war since 2014. And you went also, right? You started in Donbas, if I'm not mistaken. And about your team, okay, as well, and how you organize your work, how you work in these conditions. I think this is a good way to start off, and then we'll get into other stories that you can tell us.
Yeah. Yes, you're right. We arrived in Ukraine 2 weeks before the invasion. Our director decided to send us there because the Italian embassy was asking Italians to leave the country, to come back. And so the diplomats took that decision, I think because of the American warning. You surely remember the satellite images by Maxar, which showed almost 200,000 of Russian soldiers on the border. When we arrived in Kyiv on, I think, 13th of February, the atmosphere was very calm and quiet. Restaurants were open, people were walking in the streets, like, it was almost normal, And so me and my crew, one operator, one cameraman, and one editor, decided to go to Donbas. During these days, we witnessed the rise, the increase of artillery shootings, and then the UN inspectors confirmed that. But also there, people didn't really believe that the Russians could have invaded the country. All people told us, the Russians are brothers. They couldn't invade. They couldn't hurt us. Despite of the war, because they were facing a war since 2014. So, but they were quiet. We woke up on 24th of February by a terrible scream. We were in Popasna, a little village in Donbas. Now Popasna is under Russian occupation. And our neighbors had just listened to the statement of Putin about the special military operation. And we were 2 kilometers far from Russian tanks. So we decided at that moment to leave Popasna and reach the nearest city, Sloviansk. But we immediately understood that Putin was lying, because the Russian tanks drove immediately towards Kyiv. Yes, with the artillery, with tanks, but also with the helicopters, and we saw the images, the videos from Donbas with the Russian parachutists landed in the middle of the roads near Gostomel, the airport near Kyiv. And that day, the siege of Kyiv started, and the siege of Mariupol started in the south. It had been a terrible day, a nightmare, really a nightmare. But after 1 month, after the Russian withdrawal, we witnessed the several war crimes by Moscow. The same that we will see in Kherson, in Izium, in Kharkiv, the same, but it had been the first time. People were shot while escaping. in their own car, despite of the humanitarian corridors, according by the UN. Upon reaching Bucha, just liberated, we saw a lot of destroyed cars shooting by artillery. I can't forget a burned car with a family inside. There were a man, a father, a mother, and 2 children. And on the window, we saw a sign, "Baby on board." Despite of that, we saw a lot of, the car was shot by bullets. So I think it meant that the family was executed.
Oh my God. Oh my God.
Yeah.
Before we started talking, Stefania, we were exchanging, some information about our families and everything. And the one thing that I just don't understand, especially, because of your experience, because I remember some of the reportages, and also even in your book, by the way, everybody, I've read, Stefania's book. I mean, look, we haven't invited her because of the book. It's because of the work that she is doing every single day on the ground in Ukraine, bringing us these stories. And one thing that just transpires is that in the information space, there's a real information war going on, right? And this is what, through the reportage of in Bucha, for example, that still at that time, there were people right away, they went into, and when I say they, I'm talking about, the whole Russian disinformation machine kicked in and tried to discredit, any information, or they came out to deny about their war crimes, correct?
Yeah.
And this is shocking to me, absolutely shocking to me. When you were in Bucha, did you talk to some people? Did you, yeah.
Yeah, when we arrived in Bucha on 3rd of April, we saw a lot of corpses along the street. So the first one was an elderly man, I think, while trying to escape by bicycle, that was crazy,
Yeah.
And then we drove towards the church, the Bucha's church, and we met Father Andrew there. And he showed us the mass graves, 3 mass graves, 2 already covered and 1 full of dead bodies. And he explained to us that he personally knew these people. Large part of them were women and children. And we saw with our own eyes hundreds of corpses, and at that moment, there were a lot of international journalists there, from not just from the US, but also from the Saudi Arabia, from Japan, all over the world. So everybody has the same version, and it's incredible, impossible to believe that Ukrainian troops collected a lot of fake corpses to say what, after 1 month of occupation.
Yeah.
So anyway, actually, there are a lot of videos or satellite images, and also, the camera in outside the houses. Anyway, the international courts are investigating for clarify every finding. So it's crazy to believe that it's a fake.
Yeah.
But Stefania, I mean, your reporting has been essential in terms of bringing across that human story of the war. But there's one question that still bugs me. I mean, set aside the disinformation that the Russians didn't do this, right? We know about that. The question of why, are you able to just give any, since you talk to Ukrainians, but we haven't talked to the Russians who committed these atrocities, that question of why hangs over me. are you any closer to understanding why Russians would not only occupy Bucha, but then for some reason just execute civilians on a mass basis? It doesn't seem necessary, even in wartime.
A lot of Russian prisoners told us that they didn't believe to have to fight. They believed to enter Bucha and to enter Kiev and be welcomed, by Ukrainians. So after 5 days, they realized that people wanted to be free, wanted to be independent, and then they got crazy. I think they drove crazy and start to torture people, to execute people, to try to cancel the culture, Ukrainian culture, and the human being. I think that.
Okay.
So without in any way trying to excuse what happened, these Russians, are they simply, as it were, victims of their own systems, disinformation, that led them to think that they were liberators who would be welcomed with flowers?
Yeah, but now they realize that. I felt that when I interviewed these Russian prisoners, I felt their the change of their mind, that they realized to be a victim of the system. Yeah.
Okay.
Wow.
Yeah, no, it's absolutely incredible. One way of also, we've just touched on this now, but I want to get to something that I think few people really, really understand deeply. The Ukrainian armed forces and the territorial defense, correct? The Russians tried to break their will, right? They tried, and this is not happening. These are normal people, right? Like, as Zarushi said, these are engineers and teachers and bakers and, taxi drivers, and they were bus drivers, and just normal Ukrainian people who are defending, right, their territory. I know, Stefania, that you spent some time, right, with the territorial defense, and also, I think it was in a bunker at one point and inside a tank. There's a great picture of you inside a tank. Can you tell us about maybe some of these people, some of the people that you met?
Yes, you're right. I think that the first plan of Putin on the Blitzkrieg failed because of that. Mainly because of the strength of people, their humanity. It's true that Ukrainian army is well prepared, better than 2014, because they has been training with NATO forces since 2017 after the illegal annexion of Crimea. But I think that the main tool has been the great resistance of these civilians. During the first day of invasion, thousands of people really ran to join the territorial defense, to add the army indirectly, to build barricades, barriers, checkpoints, and to distribute food simply. And also to build Molotov, for example, in
the Molotov bottles, exactly, which you have a picture of in your book. All of these people that have a thing. You were also with the territorial defense, like speaking with them, actually in an evening with them, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, but part of the territorial defense started to work together after the war in 2014. But the incredible thing is that is seeing normal people to join the territorial defense. For example, in Dnipro, a lot of students, young students. I remember a woman, a student, who told me, "Yes, I'm preparing a Molotov now, but this afternoon I'm ready to participate to poetry reading on peace and justice."
Wow.
But if the Russian will arrive, freedom or death, you understand that it's not about the nationalism, it's about the freedom. And I think that the Ukrainian people are able to fight and to resist because of that, because they have an ideal, the ideal of freedom. Maybe we forgot that ideal, the tension of that ideals, the ideal of the independence, because we are living, we are in peace. Europe lived 80 years of peace after the Second World War, and so we didn't understand this strength, but they have. It's difficult to.
You're absolutely right. I mean, we talk to people here, and they simply don't grasp this because we don't have Russia, right? I'm speaking to you from Italy. We don't have Russia right next door, right? Yeah. Which is a constant threat. For example, in this period, there are all of the different conferences that are going on, right? In the G7, they'll be talking about that. At the Council of Europe, they were talking about that. NATO in July, okay, which is extremely important. Security in general, but these are concepts, I think you're absolutely right. They just don't get it. They don't understand, right? That this is a fight for survival. This is like, they're going to kill my kids. I have to step up, right? And I remember a long time when it started, I remember speaking with Olga, my colleague, and she said the same thing. She said, no, you don't understand. This is a fight for actual survival of their families. And they will fight because, everybody was, how everybody in the beginning had said, oh no, they'll last 3 days and that's it.
Yeah.
Then they'll cave. And Olga looked at me, she said, you don't understand Ukrainians. That's the first thing she said to me. I mean, you were there, you were living, they also helped you. Correct. Let's talk about maybe some of the people that helped you along the way, even all the the army of volunteers I mean, that's incredible, right? The schools, because I do want to talk a bit about the children. This is something that nobody ever talks about and that you touched on, okay, in one of your things. But let's talk about this army of volunteers because you see it every day.
Yeah, one of the most surprising thing is the capability of solidarity, One day, for example, we were outside a house just hit by a Russian missile. Half of the buildings were destroyed, and the owners, an old man and an old lady, invited us to share a cup of tea. And they were really worried about our security, They were survivors. They have just lost everything, the house, and they have no money to do anything, and they wanted to share with us just one thing, we are part of the same world. We have to show the world the capability to resist, and also to be to have this solidarity, to think about the other human being in a difficult situation. So and it's as always happened in a very different situation, also in Bakhmut, and an elderly woman, I think she was 90, and he took my hand and she told me, you are cold. You don't have to be so cold. You have to come back to Italy. You have to survive. Escape from here.
Oh my God.
So,
wow.
It's the character of Ukrainian people. It's
yeah. They were thinking of your safety.
Yeah.
Addirittura. Exactly.
Stefania, I want to take you back to Popasna just before the war, and maybe actually viewing the Donbas since this has happened with your experience there. There is a narrative by some out there who say, look, in effect, there are a lot of people who are more supportive of the Russian position in the Donbas, and that they may be more supportive of the Donetsk People's Republic or the Luhansk People's Republic. and almost as if to say, well, if Putin had just simply concentrated on expanding influence across the Donbas and not gone for Kiev, he might have been successful. From your observations, both before the war and since it's happened, do you still think that sense of Ukrainian resistance exists in the Donbas, that civilians there are part of that great fight, or would they have been more accepting of an expansion of Russian influence in that area?
Oh, so a little part of them, they are still supporting Russian war, a little part, but also the Ukrainian army told us that a lot of people has changed their mind about that, because also the behavior with them has changed in 15 months. But, you know, there are a lot of elderly people, and they have this like melancholy about the Soviet age, because they were young and so on. And it's also that Donbas, it's also true that Donbas is a land rich of everything, but without any kind of ads, any kind of infrastructures. It's a mistake. It has been a mistake by the state. They need a Marshall Plan to help these territories, and I think that the mentality could change. They felt alone, and so it's this weakness help Russian propaganda, I think. But there are still some people who are supporting Russians, because sometimes we witness a special operation to discover collaborants. Some people disclose the Ukrainian positions. There's a reality.
Yeah. In fact, there were special operations. We had news of some people that got blown up in their cars. That was happening. As well. Actually, to follow up on what you were talking about, Stefania, there's a great article that came out today by Luke Harding. Because today also marks the 1 year of Russian occupation of Mariupol. And Luke Harding received quite a bit, let's say, messages. I don't know how he got them, but he must have informants, so on and so forth, where they were saying it's just, the actual title of the article is what someone had said to him. It's like the USSR. That's what they're saying. So very dark, very gray, that kind of thing. So this is
Russian mir, Russiski mir.
Yeah, exactly.
Ruins and darkness.
Yeah, ruins and darkness. Well, I guess this too, I'm just thinking about people who have nostalgia for, the USSR, the Soviet period. They must be getting information about what is happening also in those areas through the different. There's the National Resistance Center, for example, that publishes quite a bit. So I don't know if they're going to be all that happy to be under Russia. I don't know, but I mean, this is maybe something. No lo so. This is something. I guess when you get back, you'll be seeing. Right?
When we saw the liberation of Kharkiv or the liberation of Kherson, we saw the happiness of the people, and we were with the Ukrainian army. So it wasn't true what Russians said, that these people were satisfied about it.
Yeah, exactly. In fact, I have to say, Stefania, when I read that part in your book, I cried. Because it's, oh my God, it was incredible. Talk about the liberation, what you saw there in Kharkiv. I mean, the one thing that came out, there was a sentence where it's, "We're alive." This is what you heard. Can you tell us about that?
Yeah, we saw the reunification of a family in Malaya Rohan, It's a village nearby Kharkiv. The grandmother had remained in Malaharoan under the Russian control. Instead, the mother and the daughter had been escaped, I think, in Kiev. And we took them back to Malaharoan with a minivan to help them and also to film the situation. Almost the village was almost destroyed by the artillery, Russian artillery. And it was a shock, an emotional shock, because they met each other after 6 months. And before this meeting, they didn't know if they were alive or not. And so when the grandmother saw the little girl start to cry and screaming, "You are alive, you are alive." And I thought, yes, it's a miracle. They are survivors. And it's one story, but there are hundreds and hundreds of these stories.
And I hope many more, as we go forward. Liberation of all of the territory.
In Izium, 450 corpses around Izium. It's incredible number. So.
Stefania, there's a lot of talk, because it's in the nature of analyst, in terms of what happens afterwards. Not just if Russia will be defeated, but will Ukraine be part of the EU? Will Ukraine be part of perhaps NATO? I just want to start off with what seems to be a simpler question, but one which you still might be difficult to answer. Do you foresee a new Ukraine? I mean, and in that sense, my understanding is this is a country which pre-2022 had a lot of issues, had a lot of issues with corruption, a lot of issues with economic inequality, with some areas of the country which didn't receive that much investment, including areas of Donbas. Do you actually foresee, beyond the immediate need of winning the war, that we are talking about one of those special moments that you get, which is of a national regeneration, regeneration of the spirit, as it were, wherever that happens to take Ukraine in the next decade?
Yeah, I'm perfectly agree with you. These issues concern also our democracies, corruption, press freedom, and so on. There are the point, but I think there's the possibility to do the same road together and to increase the quality of our democracy. If we are with Ukraine, if we stand with Ukraine and help Ukrainian people to change and also change ourselves, because it's a challenge also for us. Because they could change also our identity, European identity, but we can improve our mentality, and we have also decide to decide something about our identity, our army, our possible European president with some powers more than now, because France takes some decisions, Germany another one, Italy play another role. So we have to change, not just Ukraine has to change.
Yeah. Stefania, I do have to ask you something, because I'm just amazed when I listen to your reports, and I know, you just talked about Izium and going through Bucha, and there are probably hundreds of other situations where you found yourself in, where there was great tension, and just tragedy and all sorts of things. How do you keep it together to be able to bring such human stories to us, okay, all the time? Do you get help somehow? Is it your team? How do you keep it together?
Yes, because we are a team. We are like brothers because we spent almost 16 months in Ukraine together, and every time we try to be a family for each other. So it's a very big opportunity to create a real crew. Sometimes when we finish the work at the end of the day, we look each other and we say, "You're okay. You feel good," like psychological.
Yeah.
About psychological health. Yeah, and this kind of cure, helped us to continue to cover this situation. Sometimes it's very hard because you see just death and darkness and without any kind of lights of talks, peace talks. But I perfectly understand the position of Ukrainian leader, of Ukrainian institutions, because they want the integrity of their land, and so it's impossible to talk with anybody without this guarantee. So it's clear for me. I resist, my crew resist, because we saw the injustice of this invasion. It's impossible to talk to say a war, because it's not a war, it's an aggression, and unilateral aggression. And the only thing that the Ukrainians are doing now is defending their land. And I perfectly understand their position. It's the reason because I want to stay there and cover and film this resistance, because I don't want that people in Italy try to forget this situation, because it's not just because it's so close to us, but also because it's an example to build the democracy, to build the future. And so I resist for that.
Yeah. No, this true resilience that they have, it is the most impressive thing I've ever seen in my life.
Yeah.
It changes, your life when you see these things. Is there anything, Stefania, that, through this whole year, even before, but let's say what we've been witnessing, for quite some time, through different mediums, there is a part of us that does change. Is there anything that has changed in you through this period?
Yes, I feel that something has changed inside me, in my soul, but it's difficult to find a name, to find a definition. It's true that in Ukraine everything is black or white. You can be alive or dead. So what is in the middle is insignificant. It's difficult to stand every gray zones now for me.
Okay. Incredible. Just incredible. Actually, I have one last. There was one of your reportages. It was a video that you had posted up. You were sitting in Bakhmut, and it was totally dark. And the only thing that we could hear was the artillery fire. And this was back, I think, in November, if I'm not mistaken. I'll never forget it, because I just sat there and I said, wow, okay. And all you could hear was the artillery. It was all dark. And you said, this is the biggest campaign. What is happening now in Bakhmut is the most important thing, right?
Yeah.
Do you still believe that what is happening now in Bakhmut, will this be something that will decide in some way this war?
Yes, the first time that I entered Bakhmut was on on May, I think. And we saw the first attacks by Russians, but with missiles. And then they went farther and farther, and they started to attack Bakhmut with artillery. And in December, we spent the last day of the year with a few civilians who resisted there. It was crazy because they hadn't any kind of food, no water, no electricity, nothing, and the volunteers had to reach them, to join them with armored vehicles. So it's very dangerous also for volunteers to face these fightings, to bring water. And then the last time I was there on 22nd of February, the last time, because after 1 week, the institutions forbidden to enter Bakhmut for journalists. And anyway, the French journalist died 1 week ago to cover the situation nearby in Chasivyar.
Yeah, exactly.
And so now we saw the satellite images, the drones images, and we saw that Bakhmut is in ruin. So there are no buildings. I think I read just 80% of the city is intact. So
gone. Wow. Yeah.
I just want to thank you, Stefania. I think the guy named George Orwell, you might have heard of him, once upon a time talked about the crystal spirit. I think he wrote that during the Spanish Civil War in homage to Catalonia. And I think I'd gotten quite jaded in recent years because there's been a lot of bad news and there didn't seem to be much of the crystal spirit about. But the way that you've written and reported from Ukraine and just the way you've talked to us here is giving us a little bit of that spirit in the people that you've spoken with, but also in yourself. So thank you for being that voice and continuing to bring it out. And, it's just a pleasure to be along for the ride, even though you're the one who's having to risk it on the front line.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
One last message, Stefania, that you want to give to everyone who's listening?
What?
One last message that you would like to give to everyone who's listening?
The last message is just it's important for me to say to people, check the information before trusting everybody. Try to study the history and the international laws before judging the situation in Ukraine. We witnessed the first large-scale invasion after the Second World War. Putin destroyed the base, the architecture of our democracies, breaking every international law and rule. So it's true there's also the realpolitik, but the fact is that we are witnessing of the first large-scale invasion after the Second World War. So it's a fact, and we have to realize that this is the first one after 80 years of peace. It's important to be aware of that.
That's right. Broken every single international law that there is. Right?
Yeah.
Exactly.
Facts,
Stefania, I am just so pleased that we got to speak to you today. So I want to thank you for giving us your time, because I know that you're going to also be going back to Ukraine. Is that true?
On Sunday, yeah.
Oh, okay. So, stay safe. Stay safe.
Yeah.
Right? I'll be messaging you. Okay.
Yeah.
All right.
I'll read your messages.
Okay, good.
Good. they are an important support for me. So
okay, good.
you
I'll
helped
be
me so much during this.
Okay, all right then. It's a wrap. Scott,
Take
I'll leave you the
care.
last.
And I look forward to speaking with you again when you get back from Ukraine, if you would allow us to do so. It's been absolutely superb. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.